If you enjoy this story, please hit that subscribe button for more incredible true stories. My name is Tessa Calloway and I'm 27 years old. For as long as I can remember, my parents made it crystal clear that my older brother, Dylan, was their pride and joy while I was just there. Dylan was born first, a fact my parents never let me forget. Dylan's the golden child, Mom would say, half joking but completely serious. He was 3 years older, charismatic, athletic, and could charm anyone within minutes. I was quiet, bookish, and preferred drawing in my room to playing sports in the yard. From the time I could understand words, I knew I was second place. Dylan got the bigger bedroom. Dylan got the new clothes while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins. Dylan's report card with B's got celebrated with dinner at his favorite restaurant. My straight A's got a "that's nice, honey," and nothing more. When Dylan made the football team in high school, Dad threw a party. When I won a state art competition, they forgot to come to the ceremony. I stood on that stage holding my award, scanning the audience for their faces. They weren't there. They were at Dylan's game. That night when I showed them my trophy, Mom said, "Oh, that's wonderful, Tessa," barely looking up from her phone. Dad added, "Dylan scored 3 touchdowns today. Can you believe it?" I put my trophy in my room and never mentioned it again. That's how it always was. Dylan's achievements were celebrated. Mine were footnotes. Growing up, I tried everything to get their attention. I joined clubs. I volunteered. I maintained perfect grades. Nothing worked. The more I succeeded quietly, the more invisible I became. Dylan, meanwhile, was loud about everything. He'd come home and announce his achievements, and our parents would drop everything to celebrate. I learned to stop sharing my accomplishments. What was the point? They didn't care. But I kept working hard because I had this stubborn belief that one day they'd see me. One day they'd realize I was worth their time and pride. Dylan went to college on a partial football scholarship. Our parents paid the rest, about $20,000 a year. When I applied to colleges, I knew better than to expect the same. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I worked part-time at a grocery store all through senior year, saving every penny. When acceptance letters came, I got into a great art school with a partial scholarship. I needed $10,000 a year to cover the rest. I asked my parents for help at dinner one night. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. "We're still paying for Dylan's school. We can't afford both." I reminded them Dylan had a scholarship too. Mom sighed. "Dylan's studying business. That's practical. Art isn't a real career, Tessa." I felt something break inside me. But I didn't cry. I just nodded and left the table. I took out student loans. I worked 2 jobs while attending classes. And I swore to myself that I'd prove them wrong. College was hard but liberating. Away from home, I could breathe. I threw myself into my studies, improving my drawing and design skills. I made real friends who appreciated me. I dated a guy named Marcus who thought I was talented and beautiful. For the first time, I felt seen. During holidays, I'd go home and watch the same old patterns play out. Dylan would arrive with stories about his fraternity, his internships, his latest girlfriend. Our parents hung on every word. I'd mention my design projects or my part-time work, and they'd change the subject back to Dylan within minutes. One Christmas, I brought home a portfolio of my work. Designs I'd done for local businesses, illustrations that had been published in small magazines. I was proud of them. I showed my parents after dinner. Dad flipped through them quickly. "These are nice. You always were creative." Then he turned to Dylan. "Did you tell Tessa about your internship at Goldman Sachs?" And just like that, my work was dismissed. Dylan talked about his internship for 30 minutes. I excused myself and went to my old room. That night, I decided I was done trying to impress them. I'd focus on building my own life, my own success. If they never noticed, that was their loss. After graduation, Dylan got a job in finance, making $70,000 a year. Our parents treated him like he'd won the lottery. I graduated with honors and started freelancing as a graphic designer, barely making enough to cover rent and loan payments. My parents asked when I'd get a real job. I stopped calling home as much. They didn't seem to notice. 2 years after college, I was struggling but determined. Freelancing was unpredictable. Some months I made good money. Others I scraped by. But I was building a portfolio, getting better clients, making connections. Dylan, meanwhile, was thriving. He'd gotten promoted, bought a fancy car, moved into an expensive apartment. Every time I talked to my parents, they'd update me on his success. Dylan just got another raise. Dylan's dating a lawyer. Dylan bought a Rolex. I was happy for him mostly, but it stung that they never asked about me with the same enthusiasm. One day I got a call from a friend who worked at a tech startup. We need a designer. Full-time. Good salary. You interested? I interviewed and got the job. $55,000 a year, benefits, room for growth. It wasn't Goldman Sachs money, but it was stability. I called my parents to tell them. Mom answered. That's great, Tessa. Oh, by the way, Dylan's thinking about proposing to his girlfriend. My news once again overshadowed by Dylan. I stopped trying to share my victories with them. A year into my job, the startup began growing rapidly. My designs were a big part of our branding and marketing. The founders noticed my work and gave me more responsibility. Then, unexpectedly, they offered me equity in the company. 5%. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone except Marcus, who'd stuck with me through everything. This could be huge, he said. I hoped he was right. But I kept my expectations low. I'd learned not to count on things working out. At 25, I got news that changed everything. The startup I worked for got acquired by a major tech company for $100 million. My 5% equity suddenly became worth $5 million. $5 million. I sat in my apartment staring at the paperwork, unable to process it. Marcus and I celebrated quietly that night, but I felt numb. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But it was. After taxes and fees, I'd walk away with about $3 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. The first thing I did was pay off my student loans. $45,000 gone just like that. Then I paid off Marcus's loans. We'd been talking about marriage and I wanted us to start fresh. I bought a modest house in a nice neighborhood. Nothing crazy. Just a 3-bedroom with a yard and good schools nearby for future kids. I invested the rest carefully, living off interest and continuing to work because I loved what I did. I didn't tell my parents. I knew if I did, they'd make it about Dylan somehow. Or worse, they'd ask for money. I'd worked for this. I'd struggled. I'd done it without their support. I didn't owe them updates on my life. Marcus proposed 3 months later. We got married in a small ceremony with close friends. My parents came, but they spent most of the reception talking about Dylan's career and his recent engagement to his girlfriend, Stephanie. I didn't care. I was happy. I had Marcus' financial security and a career I loved. I didn't need their approval anymore. Dylan got married the following year. It was a massive wedding. 300 guests at a country club, open bar, the works. My parents paid for most of it. $25,000, they told me proudly. I gave a generous gift and smiled through the whole event. Stephanie was nice enough, a corporate lawyer who matched Dylan's ambition. They bought a house in an upscale suburb. My parents visited them constantly, helping with furniture, babysitting their dog, attending every dinner party. Meanwhile, Marcus and I lived 30 minutes away and my parents rarely visited. Maybe twice a year. I stopped inviting them over. It hurt less that way. When I was 26, I made a decision. I wanted to start my own design agency. I had the money, the experience, and the connections. Marcus supported the idea completely. I registered the business, hired 2 junior designers, and started taking on bigger clients. Within 6 months, we were profitable. Within a year, we had a reputation for excellent work. Clients came to us from across the country. I hired more staff. We moved into a real office. My agency was thriving. I still didn't tell my parents. They never asked what I did beyond still doing the design thing. One Thanksgiving, Dylan announced that Stephanie was pregnant. My parents were over the moon. Our first grandchild. Mom cried. Dad looked like he'd won the lottery. I was genuinely happy for them. I congratulated Dylan and Stephanie warmly. But I also felt invisible as always. Later that night, Mom pulled me aside. When are you and Marcus planning to have kids? I told her we were thinking about it. She patted my hand. Well, don't wait too long. Dylan's going to be such a wonderful father. Even in that moment, it was about Dylan. A few months later, everything changed. Dylan lost his job. The financial firm he worked for underwent restructuring and he was laid off. It wasn't performance-related, just bad luck. But Dylan panicked. He'd been living beyond his means. Expensive house, luxury cars, designer everything. He had minimal savings. Stephanie was on maternity leave, so they'd lost half their income right when they needed it most. Dylan called my parents for help. They gave him $10,000 immediately. Then 15,000 more. Then another 20,000. By the time I found out, they'd given him $45,000 total. I only knew because Mom mentioned it casually during a call. We're helping Dylan get through this rough patch. Thank goodness we have savings. I asked if they'd ever helped me when I was struggling through college and my early career. Mom went quiet. That was different. You managed fine. I didn't argue. But I felt the old resentment flare up. Dylan went 6 months without finding a new job. He was picky, turning down positions that didn't pay enough or match his previous title. Meanwhile, Stephanie returned to work after maternity leave, stressed and exhausted with a newborn. My parents kept bailing Dylan out. Paying his mortgage. Buying groceries. Covering car payments. I watched from a distance, saying nothing. Then at a family dinner things came to a head. Dylan was complaining about his job search. Everything out there is beneath me. I'm worth more than these offers. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Maybe you need to adjust your expectations. Take something stable, then work your way back up. Dylan looked at me like I'd slapped him. Easy for you to say. You've never had a real career. I felt Marcus tense beside me. What's that supposed to mean? I asked calmly. Dylan scoffed. You do freelance art or whatever. It's not the same as climbing a corporate ladder. I stood up. I own a design agency with 10 employees and 7-figure annual revenue. But you're right. It's not the same. The table went silent. Everyone stared at me. Mom spoke first. What are you talking about? I took a breath. I'd kept quiet for so long. But I was done. I started my own agency 2 years ago. We work with major brands. We're very successful. Dad frowned. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at him. Because you've never asked. You've never cared about what I do as long as you can brag about Dylan's achievements. Dylan looked angry. That's not fair. They care about both of us. I laughed. Really? Tell me one thing I'm working on right now. One client. One project. Anything. He couldn't. Neither could my parents. That's what I thought, I said. Marcus and I left shortly after. In the car I felt relieved. I'd finally said what I'd been holding in for years. The next day Mom called. She didn't apologize. She just said, you hurt Dylan's feelings. I told her Dylan had hurt mine for 27 years. She didn't know how to respond. Over the next few weeks I heard nothing from my family. I focused on my business, my marriage, my life. I was done trying to fit into their narrative. Then Dylan called. Can we talk? Just you and me. I agreed to meet him for coffee. He looked rough. Tired, stressed, older than his 30 years. I'm sorry, he said. For what I said at dinner. You're right. I don't know anything about your life because I never asked. I appreciated the apology. He continued, I've been thinking a lot. About how I've treated you. How Mom and Dad treated you. It wasn't fair. I asked why he was bringing this up now. He sighed. Because I'm drowning. And I'm realizing that I never learned how to struggle. You did. You built something from nothing. I had everything handed to me, and now that it's gone, I don't know how to cope. I felt something soften inside me. This was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Dylan told me he'd finally accepted a job offer. It paid less than his previous position but was stable. He and Stephanie were adjusting their lifestyle, selling the fancy cars, cutting expenses. It's humbling, he admitted. But necessary. I told him I was proud of him for doing what needed to be done. He asked about my agency. I told him everything. How I'd started it, what we did, who our clients were. He listened, genuinely interested. You've done amazing, Tessa. I'm sorry I never noticed before. It wasn't enough to erase years of being overlooked. But it was a start. When we parted, Dylan hugged me. Thank you for not gloating. You had every right to. I told him I didn't want to gloat. I just wanted to be seen. A few days later Mom called. Dylan told us about your business. We had no idea you were doing so well. I asked why she never asked. She stumbled over her words. We assumed you were getting by. You never said anything. I told her I tried. Many times. He didn't remember. We ended the call awkwardly. But something had shifted. That weekend my parents visited my office. They walked through, meeting my employees, seeing my work displayed on walls. Dad looked uncomfortable. This is really impressive, Tessa. Mom added, we should have been more supportive. I told them it was too late to change the past. But maybe we could do better moving forward. They agreed. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was acknowledgement. And that mattered. Over the next few months, my relationship with my parents slowly improved. They started asking about my work. They visited more often. They even babysat when Marcus and I needed date nights. It wasn't perfect. Old patterns still crept in. But they were trying. And I was learning to let them. Dylan's struggle continued for another year. He worked hard at his new job but dealt with the reality that he wasn't the golden boy anymore. His lifestyle had changed. His confidence had taken a hit. But he was growing. Stephanie told me privately that the struggle had actually improved their marriage. He's more present now. More grateful. I was happy for them. Their daughter Emma was adorable. I loved being an aunt. But I also watched my parents during this time. They were exhausted from financially supporting Dylan. They drained their savings. Dad mentioned needing to delay retirement. Mom looked stressed constantly. One evening they invited Marcus and me to dinner. Just the four of us. After we ate, Dad cleared his throat. "We need to tell you something." I waited. Mom took his hand. "We've made a lot of mistakes with you, Tessa. We favored Dylan. We dismissed your achievements. We weren't there when you needed us." I stayed quiet. Dad continued, "Watching you thrive while Dylan struggled. It made us realize how wrong we were. You didn't have our support and you succeeded anyway. Dylan had everything and he nearly fell apart when things got hard." Mom's eyes were wet. "We're sorry. We're so sorry." I felt tears forming. I needed to hear that. For years I needed to hear that. They apologized for specific things. Missing my art ceremony. Not helping with college. Constantly prioritizing Dylan. Dismissing my career. It wasn't enough to erase the pain. But it was a start. Before we left, Dad asked, "Can we help you with anything? We know we can't make up for lost time, but we want to be better." I told them the only thing I wanted was their presence. Their interest. Their pride. "Just see me," I said. That's all I ever wanted. They promised they would. 6 months later, Marcus and I found out we were pregnant. We were thrilled and terrified. When we told my parents, they reacted completely differently than when Dylan announced Stephanie's pregnancy. They hugged me. They cried. They asked questions about my health, my plans, how they could help. It was the response I'd always craved. Dylan was genuinely happy for us too. "Emma's going to have a cousin. That's amazing." The pregnancy brought our family closer. My parents visited more, helped us prepare the nursery, actually showed interest in my life. But something else happened during this time. My agency landed a massive client. A Fortune 500 company wanted us to redesign their entire brand identity. It was a 2-year contract worth over $3 million. My biggest project ever. I told my parents at Sunday dinner. Dad's face lit up. "That's incredible, Tessa." Mom asked dozens of questions about the project. Dylan raised his glass. "To my sister, the mogul." For the first time in my life, I felt celebrated by my entire family. It was surreal and overwhelming. After dinner, Mom pulled me aside. "I wish I'd been this supportive from the beginning. I wish I'd seen what an extraordinary woman you are." I told her we couldn't change the past. But we have now. And that matters. She hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you. I should have told you that every day of your life." Better late than never, I thought. My son Noah was born in June. He was perfect. My parents were there at the hospital crying happy tears. They'd missed so much of my life. But they weren't going to miss this. Watching Dad hold Noah for the first time, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Joy. Relief. Lingering sadness for the daughter who never got this kind of love. But also hope. Hope that we'd broken the cycle. That Noah would never feel invisible. When Noah was 3 months old, Dylan and Stephanie announced they were having another baby. My parents were happy but not over the top like before. They split their attention equally between both grandchildren. It was different. Better. Dylan pulled me aside at the announcement party. "You know what's funny? I used to think I had it all figured out. But watching you these past few years, seeing how you built your life without any help, I realize I never learned resilience." I asked what he meant. Mom and Dad gave me everything. When life got hard, I crumbled because I'd never faced real adversity. You faced it your whole childhood. And it made you stronger. I told him strength forged in pain is still pain. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. He nodded. "I'm trying to be different with Emma. Teach her to work for things. Value herself beyond accomplishments. I appreciated that. We were both trying to be better than our raising. Around this time, my parents' financial situation became more apparent. Supporting Dylan for nearly 2 years had devastated their savings. They were behind on their own mortgage. Dad worked overtime to catch up. I watched them struggle and felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to let them face the consequences of their choices. They'd chosen to pour everything into Dylan. Now they were paying the price. But another part, the part that had healed somewhat, wanted to help. I talked to Marcus about it. They're your parents. If you want to help them, I support it. I thought about it for weeks. Finally, I made a decision. I called my parents over for dinner. When they arrived, I could see the stress on their faces. We ate dinner while Noah napped, making small talk about safe topics. After dessert, I brought it out. An envelope. I know you're struggling financially, I said. They looked embarrassed. Dad started to deny it, but I stopped him. It's okay. I know. And I want to help. I handed them the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. Mom gasped. Tessa, we can't accept this. I told them it wasn't a loan. It was a gift. You helped Dylan when he needed it. Now I'm helping you. Dad's hands shook as he held the check. We don't deserve this. Not after how we treated you. I told them that's exactly why I was doing it. Because I'm not going to treat you the way you treated me. I'm going to be better. Mom started crying. Dad too. They tried to refuse, but I insisted. Take it. Pay off your mortgage. Get yourself stable. Let me do this. They finally agreed. Before they left, Dad said, You're a better person than we ever were. I told him I learned that despite them, not because of them. But you're trying now. That counts for something. After they left, Marcus hugged me. That was generous. I'm proud of you. I felt good about it. Not because I wanted their gratitude, but because I'd chosen compassion over resentment. I'd broken the cycle of conditional love. A few weeks later, my parents insisted on talking. They came over, serious and formal. We've been thinking, Mom started, about what we're leaving behind. Our wills. I told them I didn't want to discuss inheritance. Dad interrupted. Let us finish. Please. They explained that their original wills left everything split evenly between Dylan and me. But they wanted to change it. We want to leave you more, Mom said. To make up for all the years we didn't support you. I stopped them. I don't want your money to make up for anything. Split it evenly. That's fair. They tried to argue. I stood firm. I don't need your money. I never did. What I needed was your love and attention. Money doesn't fix that. Dad looked at me with something like awe. You really are extraordinary. I told them to keep their wills equal. Just promise me you'll treat your grandkids equally. Don't repeat the same mistakes. They promised. That conversation shifted something fundamental in our relationship. They started seeing me not as the child they'd failed, but as an adult who'd succeeded in spite of them. And that changed their respect for me. Dylan noticed the change too. He called me one day. Mom and Dad talk about you differently now. Like they're in awe of you. I asked how he felt about that. Honestly, it's weird. I was always the favorite. Now I feel like I'm playing catch up to you. I told him it wasn't a competition. We can both be successful. Both be loved. It doesn't have to be one or the other. He agreed but admitted it was an adjustment. I'm happy for you. Really. I just have to figure out who I am when I'm not the golden child. I told him to be himself. Not what our parents wanted. Just himself. That's all any of us can do. Over the next year, I watched Dylan genuinely change. He stopped competing with me. Started asking for advice. Built his career steadily without the arrogance. We became actual siblings instead of rivals. When Noah turned 1, we threw a party. My parents came early to help set up. They were present, engaged, doting on their grandson. Dylan and Stephanie came with Emma, who was now 2. Watching our kids play together felt healing. During the party, my parents gave a toast. To Noah, our beautiful grandson. And to Tessa and Marcus, who've shown us what real strength and grace look like. I cried. These were words I'd waited my whole life to hear. Later, Mom pulled me aside. I want to tell you something I should have said years ago. I waited. When you were little, you were so independent. So self-sufficient. You never demanded attention like Dylan did. We took that to mean you didn't need us. But you did. Every child needs their parents' attention and pride. She wiped her eyes. We failed you by mistaking your strength for not needing love. We're so sorry. I hugged her. Thank you for saying that. It means everything. She held me tight. You deserved better. You deserved to be celebrated. You were always worth celebrating. Those words healed something deep inside me. That evening after everyone left, Marcus and I sat on the couch. Today was good, he said. I agreed. It was. He squeezed my hand. I know your relationship with your parents is complicated, but I'm proud of how you've handled everything. I leaned against him. I just got tired of being angry. It was exhausting. He kissed my forehead. You chose healing. That takes more strength than staying bitter. I realized he was right. I could have held on to resentment forever. Could have refused to help my parents. Could have let Dylan struggle without compassion. But I'd chosen differently. And that choice had freed me. 2 years after Noah's birth, my agency hit a major milestone. We crossed 10 million in annual revenue. We expanded to a bigger office. I hired 20 more employees. We won several industry awards. My success was undeniable. And my parents were there for all of it. They attended the ribbon cutting for our new office. They came to the awards ceremony where I accepted Designer of the Year. They bragged to their friends about me the way they used to brag about Dylan. It felt good. Not because I needed their validation anymore, but because they finally saw me. Dylan's career had stabilized. He'd worked his way into a management position at a different firm. He wasn't making his old salary, but he was comfortable. More importantly, he was happy. He'd learned that success wasn't about money or status. It was about balance, family, and being content. One day he told me, "You know what's crazy? I used to feel sorry for you. I thought my life was so much better." I asked what changed his mind. Losing everything. Watching you thrive while I fell apart. It showed me that real success is what you build when nobody's helping you. You built everything yourself. I never did that. I reminded him he was building now. You're doing the work. That's what matters. He smiled. Thanks for not hating me. I wouldn't have blamed you. I told him I never hated him. I hated the situation. The favoritism. But you were just a kid too. You didn't ask to be the favorite. He looked relieved. I'm glad we're close now. I missed having a sister. I'd missed having a brother. We'd lost years to parental favoritism. But we were finding each other now. Around this time my parents' health started declining. Dad had a heart scare. Mom developed arthritis. They were in their mid-60s, not ancient, but age was catching up. I found myself stepping up to help them. Doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, home repairs. Dylan helped too, but his job was demanding and Stephanie worked long hours. I had more flexibility with my business. Marcus noticed me spending more time with my parents. Are you okay with this? After everything. I told him I was. They're my parents. They hurt me, but they're trying to make amends. I don't want to have regrets when they're gone. He supported me completely. One afternoon I took Mom to her doctor's appointment. Sitting in the waiting room she took my hand. I don't deserve your help after how I treated you. I squeezed her hand. You're my mother. I'm helping because I want to, not because you deserve it. She cried. I wasted so many years not appreciating you. I told her we had now. That's what matters. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. You're a better person than I ever was. Than I ever will be. I didn't know what to say to that. We sat in silence, holding hands until the nurse called her name. Later, driving her home, she said something that surprised me. Your father and I have been talking. About our regrets. About what we'd do differently. I asked what they came up with. Everything. We'd change everything about how we raised you. We'd see you. We'd celebrate you. We'd make you feel as loved as you deserve to feel. I felt tears forming. You can't change the past, Mom. She nodded. I know. But I can make sure you know right now how incredibly proud I am of the woman you became. Not despite us, but because of who you are deep down. Dad's health scare turned out to be serious. He needed bypass surgery. The night before the operation, our whole family gathered at the hospital. Dylan and I sat with him while they prepped him. He looked scared, smaller than I'd ever seen him. I want to tell you both something, he said. In case something goes wrong tomorrow. We told him nothing would go wrong. He insisted. Let me say this. Dylan, I'm sorry I gave you everything without teaching you how to earn it. I thought I was helping you, but I handicapped you. You're a better man now than when I was enabling you. Dylan nodded, emotional. Dad turned to me. Tessa, I'm sorry I made you invisible. Sorry I didn't see your strength, your talent, your worth. You succeeded without me. And I'm ashamed that I wasn't there cheering you on. I held his hand. Dad, I forgive you. He squeezed my hand. I don't deserve that. But thank you. The surgery went well. Dad recovered slowly but completely. During his recovery he had time to think. He told me one day while I was bringing him lunch, almost dying makes you evaluate your life. The thing I regret most is not being a better father to you. I told him he was being a better father now. That counts for something. He looked at me. Do you really forgive me? Or do you just say that because it's the right thing to say? I thought about it honestly. I'm working on forgiving you. Some days it's easier than others. But I'm trying because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you. He respected that answer. That's more than I deserve. We built a new relationship during his recovery. Based on honesty. Based on him actually seeing me. It wasn't the father-daughter relationship I'd wanted as a child. But it was something real. Noah turned 3 and Marcus and I started talking about having another baby. Life was good. My business was thriving. Our marriage was strong. Our relationship with my family was the best it had ever been. Dylan and Stephanie had their second child, a boy named Lucas. Now our kids had cousins to grow up with. My parents split their time equally between both families. It was the balance I'd always wanted. One Sunday dinner at my parents' house we were all together. Mom made her famous lasagna. The kids played in the living room. The adults talked and laughed. At one point Dad raised his glass. I want to make a toast. To my children. Both of them equally. I'm proud of the adults you've become. I'm proud of the parents you are. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say that properly. Dylan and I exchanged a look. To family, Dylan said. To family, we all echoed. After dinner Dylan and I ended up in the backyard while the kids played. He said, this is weird, right? All of us actually getting along. I laughed. So weird. He got serious. I never thanked you properly. For helping Mom and Dad when I couldn't. For not holding grudges. For being the bigger person. I told him I wasn't keeping score. We're family. Messy, imperfect family. But family. He agreed. I'm glad we figured it out before it was too late. Me too. We'd wasted so many years as strangers. But we were making up for it now. That night driving home Marcus said, your family's come a long way. I agreed. It's not perfect. But it's better. He smiled. You made it better. By refusing to let bitterness win. I thought about that. I could have stayed angry forever. Could have cut my parents off. Could have let Dylan drown. But I'd chosen healing. And that choice had given me back my family. When I was 29 something unexpected happened. A major advertising agency in New York reached out. They wanted to acquire my company for $15 million. I was stunned. My agency was successful but I hadn't thought about selling. Marcus and I discussed it for weeks. The money was life-changing. But I loved what I'd built. Finally I realized the answer. I didn't want to sell completely. But I could sell majority stake while staying on as creative director. We negotiated that deal. I sold 70% for $12 million, keeping 30% and continuing to lead the creative direction. It was the best of both worlds. Financial security and keeping the work I loved. When I told my parents they were thrilled. But their response was different from how they would have reacted to Dylan years ago. Dad said, I'm proud of you for building something worth that much. But I'm more proud that you're staying true to what you love. Mom added, money doesn't define success. The life you've built does. I appreciated that. They'd learned. We all had. Dylan's response was equally genuine. You've done something incredible, Tessa. Something I never could have done. I told him he had his own strengths. We're different people. That's okay. He smiled. It's better than okay. It's perfect. With the money from the sale Marcus and I paid off our house, invested heavily for retirement and the kids' futures, and donated a significant amount to charity. We also did something meaningful. We started a scholarship fund for art students from low-income families. Students like I was. Students who needed support to pursue their dreams. I named it after my mother, Rosa. The woman who'd cleaned houses so I could have opportunities. At the scholarship fund launch, my parents came. So did Dylan and Stephanie. Watching Mom cry as I talked about supporting young artists, I felt like everything had come full circle. The girl who was overlooked was now creating opportunities for other overlooked kids. That felt like the ultimate success. A year after selling my company, I got pregnant with our second child. A daughter we'd named Sophie. My parents were overjoyed. Dylan and Stephanie were expecting their third. Our families were growing in parallel. One evening, heavily pregnant and tired, I sat with Mom on my back porch while the kids played in the yard. She watched Noah chase butterflies and said quietly, "I wish I could go back and do it all differently." I told her we all had regrets. The past is done. We can only control now. He turned to me. "Do you ever wonder who you would have been if we'd supported you from the beginning?" I'd thought about that often. Maybe I wouldn't have worked as hard. Maybe I needed the struggle to become who I am. She shook her head. "You shouldn't have had to struggle for your parents' love. That should have been free." I agreed. But I'm not angry anymore. I've let it go. He squeezed my hand. How did you forgive us?" I told her the truth. Because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it hurt. Because I wanted peace more than I wanted to be right. And because you've genuinely changed. She cried. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I said, "Forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to move forward instead of staying stuck in the past." That conversation marked something important. Complete acceptance. Complete healing. We weren't pretending the past didn't happen. We were acknowledging it and choosing something better. Sophie was born in March. Dylan and Stephanie's third child, a girl named Lily, arrived 2 months later. My parents were in heaven with 5 grandchildren. And they treated every single one equally. No favorites. No comparisons. They'd learned. When Sophie was 6 months old, I got a call from a major network. They wanted to do a documentary series on successful female entrepreneurs. They wanted to feature me. I agreed, but only if I could tell the whole story. The struggle. The being overlooked. The eventual success. The healing with my family. The documentary aired the following year. Millions of people watched it. I got messages from thousands of women who'd felt invisible in their own families. Who'd been overlooked in favor of siblings. Who'd succeeded despite lack of support. My story resonated because it was honest. I didn't pretend everything was perfect. I showed the pain and the triumph. After it aired, my parents called. Dad said, "Watching that was hard. Seeing how much we hurt you. But I'm glad you told the truth." Mom added, "You helped so many people by sharing your story. I'm proud of you for being brave enough to be vulnerable." Dylan called too. "That must have been hard to put it all out there. But you did it with grace." I told him it was cathartic. Telling the truth is freeing. The documentary opened new doors. I was invited to speak at conferences about entrepreneurship, resilience, and family dynamics. I wrote a book about my journey. It became a bestseller. I used the platform to talk about parental favoritism and its long-term effects. To encourage parents to see all their children. To help overlooked kids know their worth isn't determined by their parents' attention. My parents attended one of my speaking events. Sitting in the audience watching me on stage talking about how their favoritism affected me must have been painful. But they stayed. They listened. They learned. After the event, Dad hugged me tight. "You turned your pain into purpose. That's remarkable." I told him I'd had no choice. The pain was there anyway. I had to do something with it. Mom said, "You've helped so many families avoid our mistakes. That's a gift." I appreciated their support. 3 years after Sophie's birth, Marcus and I decided our family was complete. 2 kids felt right. Dylan and Stephanie stopped at 3. My parents had 5 grandchildren to love and spoil equally. Life had found a balance I never thought possible. One Thanksgiving, our whole family gathered at my house. I'd insisted on hosting. As I watched everyone laughing, kids playing, adults actually enjoying each other's company, I felt overwhelming gratitude. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, emotional. "Just thinking about how far we've come." He kissed my temple. "You made this happen. By refusing to give up on them." I had refused to give up. But I'd also refused to accept being treated poorly. That combination of boundaries and grace had transformed everything. Before dinner, I asked everyone to share what they were grateful for. Noah said his cousins. Sophie said Mommy's cookies. The adults got more emotional. Dylan said, "I'm grateful for second chances. For learning what really matters. And for a sister who showed me what strength looks like." Stephanie thanked our family for support during tough times. My parents went last. Dad stood up, emotional. "I'm grateful for my children. Both of them. For their patience while I learned to be a better father. For their grace in forgiving me. And for the beautiful family they've created." Mom added through tears, "I'm grateful that it's not too late. That we get to be part of our children's lives. That they let us be better grandparents than we were parents." I raised my glass. To family. Imperfect, messy but trying. That's all any of us can do. We clinked glasses. And for the first time in my 32 years, I felt completely seen by my entire family. A few months later, Dad's health declined again. More serious this time. Cancer. Stage 3. The doctors gave him 2 years, maybe less. Our family rallied. Dylan and I took turns taking him to treatments. Mom was devastated but strong. We made the most of the time we had. Dad used his illness as an opportunity to say things he'd left unsaid. One afternoon, just the two of us in his hospital room, he took my hand. "I need you to know something. You were always enough. From the moment you were born, you were perfect. I failed to show you that. That's my greatest regret." I squeezed his hand. "I know that now, Dad. You've shown me these past few years." He shook his head. "Not enough. I can never make up for the years I made you feel less than. But I need you to know you were never less than. You were always extraordinary. I was just too blind to see it." I cried. "Thank you for saying that." He pulled me close. "I'm so proud of you. Of who you are. Of what you've built. Of the mother you've become. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that every single day." I forgave him. Completely. In that moment, I let go of every last bit of resentment. Dad fought the cancer for 18 months. During that time, our family grew even closer. We made memories. Took photos. Said everything that needed to be said. When he passed, we were all there. Dylan and I held his hands. Mom kissed his forehead. We told him we loved him. That he could rest. That we'd be okay. He died peacefully, surrounded by family. At his funeral, Dylan gave the eulogy. He talked about Dad's business success, his love for Mom, his pride in his grandchildren. Then he said something that surprised me. My father made mistakes. He'd be the first to admit that. He played favorites. He didn't always see what was right in front of him. But in his final years, he worked hard to make amends. He learned. He grew. He became the father he should have been all along. Dylan looked at me. My sister taught him that. She showed him what grace looks like. What forgiveness looks like. She gave him the gift of redemption. And I'm grateful to her for that. I cried through the rest of the service. After the funeral, people told me stories about Dad. How in his final years he talked constantly about me. About my business. About my strength. About how proud he was. He'd made up for lost time in the end. Not completely. But enough. Enough for me to have peace. After Dad died, Mom leaned on Dylan and me heavily. We supported her through grief. Helped her adjust to living alone. Made sure she wasn't isolated. She sold the big house and moved into a smaller condo near me. We had lunch twice a week. She was present in my kids' lives, a loving grandmother who never played favorites. One day over lunch she said, "I want to tell you something I've never told anyone." I waited. "When you were little, you reminded me so much of myself. Quiet, creative, sensitive. I think I projected my own feelings of inadequacy onto. Because I wanted peace more than I wanted to be right. And because you've genuinely changed." She cried. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I said, "Forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to move forward instead of staying stuck in the past." That conversation marked something important. Complete acceptance. Complete healing. We weren't pretending the past didn't happen. We were acknowledging it and choosing something better. Sophie was born in March. Dylan and Stephanie's third child, a girl named Lily, arrived 2 months later. My parents were in heaven with 5 grandchildren. And they treated every single one equally. No favorites. No comparisons. They'd learned. When Sophie was 6 months old, I got a call from a major network. They wanted to do a documentary series on successful female entrepreneurs. They wanted to feature me. I agreed, but only if I could tell the whole story. The struggle. The being overlooked. The eventual success. The healing with my family. The documentary aired the following year. Millions of people watched it. I got messages from thousands of women who'd felt invisible in their own families, who'd been overlooked in favor of siblings, who'd succeeded despite lack of support. My story resonated because it was honest. I didn't pretend everything was perfect. I showed the pain and the triumph. After it aired, my parents called. Dad said, "Watching that was hard. Seeing how much we hurt you. But I'm glad you told the truth." Mom added, "You helped so many people by sharing your story. I'm proud of you for being brave enough to be vulnerable." Dylan called too. "That must have been hard to put it all out there. But you did it with grace." I told him it was cathartic. Telling the truth is freeing. The documentary opened new doors. I was invited to speak at conferences about entrepreneurship, resilience, and family dynamics. I wrote a book about my journey. It became a bestseller. I used the platform to talk about parental favoritism and its long-term effects. To encourage parents to see all their children. To help overlooked kids know their worth isn't determined by their parents' attention. My parents attended one of my speaking events. Sitting in the audience watching me on stage talking about how their favoritism affected me must have been painful. But they stayed. They listened. They learned. After the event, Dad hugged me tight. "You turned your pain into purpose. That's remarkable." I told him I'd had no choice. The pain was there anyway. I had to do something with it. Mom said, "You've helped so many families avoid our mistakes. That's a gift." I appreciated their support. 3 years after Sophie's birth, Marcus and I decided our family was complete. 2 kids felt right. Dylan and Stephanie stopped at 3. My parents had 5 grandchildren to love and spoil equally. Life had found a balance I never thought possible. One Thanksgiving, our whole family gathered at my house. I'd insisted on hosting. As I watched everyone laughing, kids playing, adults actually enjoying each other's company, I felt overwhelming gratitude. Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, emotional. "Just thinking about how far we've come." He kissed my temple. "You made this happen. By refusing to give up on them." I had refused to give up. But I'd also refused to accept being treated poorly. That combination of boundaries and grace had transformed everything. Before dinner, I asked everyone to share what they were grateful for. Noah said his cousins. Sophie said Mommy's cookies. The adults got more emotional. Dylan said, "I'm grateful for second chances. For learning what really matters. And for a sister who showed me what strength looks like." Stephanie thanked our family for support during tough times. My parents went last. Dad stood up, emotional. "I'm grateful for my children. Both of them. For their patience while I learned to be a better father. For their grace in forgiving me. And for the beautiful family they've created." Mom added through tears, "I'm grateful that it's not too late. That we get to be part of our children's lives. That they let us be better grandparents than we were parents." I raised my glass. To family. Imperfect, messy, but trying. That's all any of us can do. We clinked glasses. And for the first time in my 32 years, I felt completely seen by my entire family. A few months later, Dad's health declined again. More serious this time. Cancer. Stage 3. The doctors gave him 2 years, maybe less. Our family rallied. Dylan and I took turns taking him to treatments. Mom was devastated but strong. We made the most of the time we had. Dad used his illness as an opportunity to say things he'd left unsaid. One afternoon, just the 2 of us in his hospital room, he took my hand. "I need you to know something. You were always enough. From the moment you were born, you were perfect. I failed to show you that. That's my greatest regret." I squeezed his hand. "I know that now, Dad. You've shown me these past few years." He shook his head. "Not enough. I can never make up for the years I made you feel less than. But I need you to know you were never less than. You were always extraordinary. I was just too blind to see it." I cried. "Thank you for saying that." He pulled me close. "I'm so proud of you. Of who you are. Of what you've built. Of the mother you've become. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that every single day." I forgave him. Completely. In that moment, I let go of every last bit of resentment. Dad fought the cancer for 18 months. During that time, our family grew even closer. We made memories. Took photos. Said everything that needed to be said. When he passed, we were all there. Dylan and I held his hands. Mom kissed his forehead. We told him we loved him. that he could rest, that we'd be okay. He died peacefully, surrounded by family. At his funeral, Dylan gave the eulogy. He talked about Dad's business success, his love for Mom, his pride in his grandchildren. Then he said something that surprised me. My father made mistakes. He'd be the first to admit that. He played favorites. He didn't always see what was right in front of him. But in his final years he worked hard to make amends. He learned. He grew. He became the father he should have been all along. Dylan looked at me. My sister taught him that. She showed him what grace looks like. What forgiveness looks like. She gave him the gift of redemption. And I'm grateful to her for that. I cried through the rest of the service. After the funeral, people told me stories about Dad. How in his final years he talked constantly about me. About my business. About my strength. About how proud he was. He'd made up for lost time in the end. Not completely. But enough. Enough for me to have peace. After Dad died, Mom leaned on Dylan and me heavily. We supported her through grief. Helped her adjust to living alone. Made sure she wasn't isolated. She sold the big house and moved into a smaller condo near me. We had lunch twice a week. She was present in my kids' lives, a loving grandmother who never played favorites. One day over lunch she said, I want to tell you something I've never told anyone. I waited. When you were little you reminded me so much of myself. Quiet, creative, sensitive. I think I projected my own feelings of inadequacy onto